Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Julian Gower, and today we are just outside of Butler, Missouri in Bates County, and that is in southwestern Missouri, and there is so much to see here. Right now we are at the Battle of Island Mound. That's what's right behind me, and that was the first time that African American troops engaged in the Civil War, and we're going to go check that out. Then we're going to go into town. We're going to look at their downtown square. We're going to go see some really cool buildings. There's an old jail and the world's tiniest tombstone. I really can't wait to check that out. So let's get going.
We are starting our day at the Battle of Island Mound. Now, this was a small skirmish between the 1st Kansas Colored Infantry Volunteers and a band of Confederate guerrillas, and this was the first time African American soldiers fought in the Civil War. Now, there's not really much to see down here. There is a walking trail with informational markers that we're going to take and learn about this battle. And this marker says, here on October 29, 1862, was the first crucible to test the mettle of formerly enslaved black men during the Civil War. Here, a group of volunteers faced battle with certainty of only two outcomes, victory or death, for there would be no quarter given to a black man who had taken up arms. Many of these men were former slaves who had escaped or been freed on raids, and had they been caught, they would have been shot on the spot. In uniforms issued on behalf of a country that had not yet emancipated them, they revealed courage and tenacity under fire. The 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry defeated a force rebellious to the federal government, laying rest to doubts that former slaves could perform as soldiers. Their bravery and determination helped our nation better understand the Founding Fathers' words, "All men are created equal." And this is a national park, and it was dedicated on October 27th, 2012. So we are on the Kansas-Missouri border, and Kansas was admitted as a free state just months prior to the start of the Civil War. And while the state of Missouri was part of the Union, most of its citizens sided with the Confederacy, and bands of guerrillas who went into Kansas on raids were known to hide not far from here at a place called Hog Island. On October 27, 1862, 240 men from the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry marched into Bates County to clear them out. They commandeered the farm of Enoch and Christina Toothman. They were Southern sympathizers, and Enoch Toothman was a known guerrilla supporter, and he was in jail in Fort Lincoln. They fortified the cabin and renamed it Fort Africa. On October 29th, the soldiers were running low on food, so their commanding officer, Captain Henry Seaman, sent out a party to forage for food, and as a diversion to protect those men, he sent out an 8-man detachment to engage the rebels. The rebels took this opportunity to deal with slaves that had turned soldiers and punish them. They attacked the Kansas party, who engaged but also fell back to Fort Africa. The rebels then set fire to the prairie, hoping to smoke out the rest of the regiment. The Kansas soldiers then lit a backfire in order to protect Fort Africa. Captain Seaman sent a small scouting party led by a soldier named John Sixkiller to the east of the fire to determine where the rebels were. They were told to stay within sight of Fort Africa. However, when the smoke cleared, they were nowhere to be seen. Lieutenant Joseph Gardner was sent with a detachment to find the scouting party and bring them back. However, Gardner discovered that they had found and engaged the rebels. Instead of returning back to the fort, Gardner and his men joined the fight, pushing them further and further south beyond Island Mound. The small band of Union soldiers were now about a mile from Fort Africa when 130 rebels appeared from the woods bordering the Maurice des Cygnes River. The soldiers retreated towards Island Mound, but the rebels caught up with them. On the southern slope of Island Mound, the two groups clashed in deadly fighting. Amidst the prairie fires set by both sides, the bloody and desperate battle was fought hand to hand with no mercy given. There was no unit cohesion as the Southerners rode amongst the trapped soldiers. Outnumbered 6-1, they faced a mounted foe armed with shotguns, pistols, and sabers. The soldiers fought back using the bayonets and the butts of their rifles against their attackers. Hearing the fighting, Captains Armstrong and Thrasher joined the fighting. With the added gunpowder, the rebels retreated and the battle was over.
This place is so peaceful and so quiet. I love how you can just hear everything. You can hear the cars off in the distance. You can hear the birds, the insects. Oh, this place. I'm glad this place is here because this is very historically significant and this is a really nice walk. I'm having a great morning.
According to Chris Tabor, who wrote the Skirmish at Island Mound, Missouri, Sergeant Edward Lowry provided an example of bravery and tenacity of African American soldiery that day. Badly wounded in the shoulder and arm by a shotgun blast, Lowry soon found himself surrounded by 3 rebels demanding his surrender. Knowing what fate likely awaited him at the hands of the rebels and his weapon empty, Lowry replied with the butt of his rifle, knocking one of the rebels from his horse. He finished off the fallen rebel with a slashing blow to the head from his bayonet. Lowry then turned on his other would-be captors, killing both of them with his bayonet and rifle butt. 8 men of the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry died, including John Sixkiller. They were buried on the Toothman Farm, and the location of their graves is unknown. Also unknown are the casualties of the rebels. Newspapers across the nation reported on the battle, and accounts about the soldiers' bravery helped ease doubts about how former enslaved men might perform in battle. And this opened the door for African American soldiers to fight. The efforts of more than 180,000 African American soldiers directly contributed to the Union victory.
Wow, what an amazing story that was. Can you imagine escaping slavery, getting to freedom, and then having to go back or choosing to go back and fight, knowing full well that if you got caught, you were going to be shot? That's some courage. This place makes my heart swell. I really like this place. I know there's not much to see, but wow, how cool. Okay, on to the next adventure. We are headed into Butler, Missouri. We're going to go into the downtown, see the courthouse, and check out their downtown buildings and see what we can see. Let's go. Look at that sucker. Oh my goodness.
So we are now on the courthouse square here in Butler, Missouri, and I timed this pretty well because I got here just in time to hear the clock chime 10 o'clock. This courthouse was built in 1902 at the cost of $50,000, and like most of these small county courthouses, this one has some elaborate details. I mean, check out that turret. And then if we look up there, there's the clock that's causing all that ruckus.
And again, it is ornate. And they have all these statues. So there's liberty and justice. And then look at this detail on that tower. Absolutely beautiful. Look at that road made out of brick. It is so uneven, but so incredibly cool. Look at that.
I bet that is a nightmare to maintain.
All these old towns and these downtown areas, these buildings, they were built, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and they've got such cool detail on them. They're just so pretty. I have no idea what this is all about, but do you see that those keystones above those windows, they all have numbers on them, 8s and 1s, and then that one on the end is a 7. I have never seen that before. Does anybody have any idea what that is all about? Oh, look, and on this one too, you can barely see it. I see an 8 and a 1. Very cool. Okay, now I'm curious. And here's City Hall. Look at that sucker. I bet that was a bank in its previous life.
And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know how I love to use these Sanborn fire maps from the turn of the century. And I found one for Butler. And as you can see on the corner where this building is, it used to be a grocery store. And I'm thinking that this building that's here now was built after this map because there's no grocery store that would have such an elaborate outside.
Look at all that scrolls. Oh, that is beautiful, those columns. And they have a couple of monuments here. The first one is in memory of our World War veterans. And I really like that statue. He looks like a World War I doughboy. Interesting. Then this is the Battle of Island Mound marker. This is the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry. They fought like tigers. Huh. Oh, and here's a marker. This is about order number 11. The forced evacuation and burning of Bates County.
Order number 11 was issued on August 25, 1863 by Union General Thomas Ewing, and that was issued 4 days after Quantrell's raid on Lawrence, Kansas. All residents in Bates, Cass, Jackson, and Vernon County were forced to evacuate in an effort to disrupt Confederate supply lines of food, horses, and shelter. Everyone in the county was banished. The Union Army gave the residents 15 days to get out or be forcibly removed. Once the area was cleared out, Union soldiers came through and torched homes and towns, and only about a third of the residents returned in 1866. And what they found was total devastation and tax bills for 3 years' worth of delinquent property taxes. The land of those who did not return was sold to new settlers, many being from northern states.
Like I said, I always love to come down to the courthouse area and the downtown area and these little towns just to see what they have, because really they're very, very beautiful and they're old, and the courthouses around here are usually pretty ornate. So we're done with that. Let's go see what else we can find.
This very beautiful building is not a home, but it was once a jail. The sheriff and his family lived on the first floor while the prisoners were held up on the second floor. This has definitely got some creepy vibes going on. And I'm kind of bummed because I did see a picture and there was a log cabin like right over there in that area, and doesn't look like it's here anymore. I tell you what, this is why I love getting out and going places that I've never been and investigating, because I usually find really interesting stories, and I found one here. So, behind this jail on April 17th, 1903, Dr. James Gartell was hanged for the axe murder of D.B. Donegan. Donegan was a gold miner from Colorado who was on his way to Oklahoma where he intended to buy a ranch. He met Dr. James Gartell and his son William, and arrangements were soon made that the three would drive to Oklahoma together. When about 100 miles from Kansas City, the party stopped to spend the night in a deserted cabin. The three men lay down to sleep, but only the two younger men slept. When the younger Gartell awoke and saw that his father had killed Donegan by splitting his skull with an axe, he asked, "What did you kill him for, father?" "Because, son, we needed the money," answered the old man. The two carried Donegan's body to a nearby creek and dropped it in, where it was found about 2 weeks later. Suspicion was directed towards the Gartells, and when upon investigation it was learned that Dr. Gartell had sold the team of horses in the neighborhood where the crime was committed, the father and son were arrested. Dr. Gartell later confessed that he killed Donegan, entirely exonerating his son, but he did insist that he did it in self-defense. And Dr. Gartell was once a famous lawyer who served in the Confederacy in the Civil War. He was elected county judge and then sent to the Texas State Senate for 2 years. But apparently he became a drunkard, and this was the source of all of his troubles. Dr. Gartell was the oldest man who the death sentence has ever been pronounced in Missouri. He was 72 years old. And this would also be the last public hanging in the state of Missouri. It used to be a museum. Bates County Law Enforcement Museum. Let's see if we can get a decent picture. They still have a lot of stuff. All right, well, on to the next adventure.
So we are now at Oak Hill Cemetery. This is where Ripley's smallest tombstone is, and I have been looking all over the place for this tombstone, and there was a sign that I completely missed. So it's over here. Let's go check it out.
Ripley's Believe It or Not visited the cemetery in 1966 and designated this the smallest tombstone in the world. It measures approximately 4 3/8 by 3 1/4, and it's 2.5 inches thick.
It's tiny, so no wonder I'm having trouble finding it. But, oh, I think I see it. There it is. There it is. I found it. All right. Here we have it. This is the world's tiniest tombstone. And I will put my hand up there so you can see. And this thing, it flips. Look, it flips over.
So Lenny was only 14 years old when she died in 1898, and the Butler Daily Democrat wrote, "Lenny Crouch, the bright little colored girl, was greatly beloved by her people and esteemed by all who knew her. She was a child of unusual promise, being talented in music, for 5 years organist for the Sunday school. Lenny had been afflicted with lung trouble for 4 years and bore her suffering with patience at all times."
Amazing. This is it. This is just a tombstone. Oh, and look, people have been leaving stuff.
Change.
Uh-huh. Very cool.
Some of it's falling off.
Thank you guys for joining me on my adventure today. I hope that you learned something. I hope you had a good time. If you did, please consider hitting the like button because it really does help out my little bitty channel, and I will be eternally grateful. And as always, I will see you all next week for another adventure. Bye now.